Hi, FBC Lumberton students. So we are on our last session on the parables of the kingdom today. But before we get into the word, I have a couple of announcements to keep you up to date. Again, first and foremost, the mission trip. It's coming up. Please sign up. The last day to sign up is May 30th. And I don't know why you'd want to miss out on this. It is $50 to go to Colorado. Next to that is camp. Get signed up. The price is now shot up from $100 to $125. But for you, if you haven't signed up, or for any friends that still want to go, you can still sign up. But the sooner, the better. So this week we started something new, and I just want to send a reminder to you guys through this video. Read John chapter 1 this week. So let's go ahead and jump straight into the text. This week we talked about the theme of the growing kingdom. See, the first week we talked about the spreading of the gospel and how we're not to care about how long it takes or to grow, or how long it takes to take root, or where we even spread the gospel to. We're not to worry about that. God does the work. We're just called to spread the seed. The next week we talked about how valuable the gospel is, how valuable salvation is, and how when we discover it, we as Christians, when we truly discover it, when it takes root in us, we're willing to get rid of everything. We're especially willing to get rid of our own desires because God gives us new desires. So this week what we talked about was two more parables, and this is about how God's kingdom grows. All right, so I'm going to start out by reading both parables to you. This is coming from Matthew 13, verses 31 through 35, and it says, "He put another parable before them, saying, 'The kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed that a man took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all seeds, but when it is grown, it is larger than all the garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and make nests in its branches.' He told them another parable. 'The kingdom of heaven is like leaven that a woman took and hid in 3 measures of flour till it was all leavened.' All these things Jesus said to the crowds in parables. Indeed, he said nothing to them without a parable. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet. 'I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter what has been hidden since the foundation of the world.'" Both of these parables have something to do with how quickly the kingdom grows. The first parable of the mustard seed talks about a seed was one of the smallest they used. It grows to about 15 feet tall, definitely sufficient to house birds in their nests. But it grows outwardly, and it grows very rapidly. Such a small thing grows to be such a very big garden plant. Now, this isn't like some tall tree. You may have heard that said before. But it grows very rapidly, and it grows taller than any of the garden plants. The second parable we talked about talks about what yeast does. Yeast is actually really this interesting substance. It's this culture of living organisms that will eat the sugars in flour and produce gas. And this grows the bread over time. But what's interesting to note here is that in our English translations, we see 3 measures. And we don't really know what 3 measures are. And really, the number 3 seems like a small number, so we don't really think about this often. We think, oh, well, they just put it in maybe 3 loaves of bread or 3 something. 3 measures of flour, when translated out the correct way, comes up to 144 cups of flour, 57 loaves, whole loaves of bread. This, again, is talking about how the kingdom of heaven is like this yeast, that a woman comes along and doesn't just intend to feed a family, but a village. The gospel is that way. The kingdom of heaven is that way. It grows exponentially. It grows very large, and it grows very rapidly, and it's intended for much more than just you or your family. It's intended for the world, for a village. See, in verses 34 through 35, it states that, this is part of God's intended plan. That these parables were spoken in such a way, but it was an intentional way. Each one of these parables has had something to do with the kingdom. How we're called to spread the gospel so that the kingdom can grow. How we're called to see the value we are to grow the kingdom in such a way that is rapid and exponential. So let's get connected to God. Let's get connected to the gospel. Let's get connected to our purpose in the gospel. Let us not forget to pray for the fruits of the Spirit to come in. When we're changed, when we truly discover the gospel, it says that we'll be willing to give up all we have. We'll be willing to give up our desires. Take part in what these parables are telling us to do, to grow the kingdom of God, to cultivate the earth. So I appreciate you guys. I hope that you've enjoyed this series. This next week, we are going to have Lumberton Youth Games. I'm going to start calling them FBCYL games. And so I hope you guys are here. We're going to have lots of fun with that. And then, of course, this Sunday, 180 Culture. And remember to read John chapter 1. Thank you. Bye-bye.